In my last video, I briefly mentioned that I might post a video on how to use different features of the mod Place Everywhere that allows you to do basically whatever you want with your builds, like no limitations whatsoever. And a lot of you were like, do it! So here's me making that video. Just a little disclaimer here, this tutorial is for the mod Place Everywhere, only available on PC. There are mods for the Xbox and PS4 called Place Anywhere that do pretty much the same thing, but as far as the controls go, this is for PC because we will be using the keyboard. So, now at first, this mod is pretty straightforward. It allows you to place anything anywhere you want. Literally does not matter, you will never see red. The objects could be hovering or clipping into each other, doesn't matter, you can still place it down. The only exception to that is placing things outside of the settlement border, which you can still do with Place Everywhere, but you have to place down the object within the border first and then pick it up and then move it outside of the border. So that's kind of a pain in the ass. To get around that, I downloaded a mod called Build and Scrap Beyond the Workshop Boundaries. The name is kind of a nightmare, but it works perfectly. It extends the boundaries of every settlement, so that paired with Place Everywhere takes away pretty much all of the limitations. I could build things all the way out into the water over there and further. It's pretty scary because I should not have this much power. So on top of all that are all kinds of techniques and features from Place Everywhere that you can use for precision building. Basically no limitations, you can build whatever, however you want. By the way, all of this I learned from a buddy of mine, Donald Strong, and from working on the Sim Settlements team. Those guys were incredible and my building has gotten 100 times better since then. Like, I'm so good at building right now, guys, you don't even know. You can't even understand how good I am at building. Alright, so starting in order, if I hit F1 on the keyboard, it will turn off object snapping, which seems like a weird thing to turn off, but it actually comes in handy a lot of the time. And if I hit F1 again, it turns it back on. An example of when you might want to use this, I had to recreate this whole Brotherhood of Steel platform from scratch, and I wanted this barricade to go right here to match the other one that I have on the other side. But you see, with snapping turned on, it's going all over the place, except for the one spot where I want it. So what I would do is bring this out, hit F1, and now object snapping's turned off, and I can place it down exactly where I want it. So, game, I win, you lose. Next up, if I hit F2 on the keyboard, it turns off surface snapping, and if I hit it again, it toggles it back on. So surface snapping comes into play with objects that stick to the ground like this stool. You see how I slightly bring it down and it just pops to the floor. So that's surface snapping. And when I hit F2 to turn it off, now I'm able to place it down wherever I want without worrying about it snapping to the floor. This is extremely handy when you're trying to do things like decorate shelves. You see I have this beer crate here. With surface snap turned on, it just pops right down to the table because it wants to be on a flat surface, which makes it really difficult to decorate all the levels of this shelf. But if I hit F2 to turn off surface snapping, now I'm able to place down whatever I want inside every level of this shelf. So Cordless 2, game 0. Another good example is this couch. So I made this from a couple of chairs and a coffee table, and these chairs want to stick to the floor, so I can't raise it up to a normal height without it being too high or too low. So turning off surface snap, now I'm able to place it down and line it up with like the TV or maybe another coffee table just to get the right height. Then place a coffee table underneath it to show some legs, and then boom, custom made couch I probably couldn't do without this feature. Alright, so everything up until now has been child's play. Okay, it's time to put on our big boy pants because shit's about to get crazy. I briefly went over this in my last video, so I'm going to do it again but in way more detail. Now, I built all of this inside of a plane, and you see that the frame of it is a bit slanted and kind of curved, which makes sense because it's a plane, so that checks out. But when I try to put in one of these walls, it snaps in like normal, which is straight up and not in line with the frame, so I need to rotate that down a bit to get it to line up. Alright, it's too cluttered in here, so I'm going to go outside to show you how this works. But essentially, you can rotate objects any way you want. It can just be a bit confusing at first. So you have 3 axes to go off of, X, Y, and Z. Don't worry, there's no quiz at the end of the video. If you hit Control on the keyboard, it toggles through each of those axes, which determines how your object is going to rotate. Another factor in the rotation is which direction that you're facing. So for example, let's face exactly north, which is right here. Yeah, my hold to go into workshop button doesn't work, so I actually have to select the bench, which is fine. But for this example, I'm going to use the same window that I'm trying to place inside of the plane, just so you guys can see what it looks like. Alright, so I'm going to make sure that I'm on the X-axis by hitting Control, And there it is, changed to x-axis. Now don't select the window, don't pick it up or anything, just highlight it and then hit comma or period to start to rotate it. So I'm hitting comma right now and it's rotating towards me, which is exactly how I want it to rotate in the plane. And if I start hitting period, you see it starts to rotate away from me. Now it's rotating like this because I'm facing directly north. If I were to change my direction, it gets a little more complicated. So I'm going to place it down in more the direction of how it's going to be in the plane. I'm still on the x-axis and now I'm hitting comma. And you see it's no longer rotating directly towards me or away from me. It's kind of all weird because, you know, math or geometry or whatever it was I didn't pay attention to in school. All I know is that if I'm not facing directly north or south, it's going to rotate all weird like this. So here's how I work around this. There might be a better way, but this is how I do it. I keep track of how many times I move it in a certain direction. So I'm on the x-axis and I'm hitting comma 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Then hit control to switch to the y-axis. I'm going to hit comma the same amount of times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And that should balance it out. And yeah, see, it's straight. And that's really all you have to do. Just take note of how many times you move it, then toggle between the X or the Y axis, the Z doesn't matter for this part, and then do the same amount on that side, and it should be relatively even. Now once you rotate it, if you pick it up and move it around, it's gonna get a little crazy. It doesn't stay in the same position you moved it in because, I don't know, physics or math. Look at what math is doing to us. The only way that it will stay in this position when you pick it up is if you continue facing the same direction. So you can move it around a little bit, but don't get too crazy. Alright, we covered rotating, so let's dig a little bit deeper. When I hit comma or period to rotate the wall, notice how much is rotating with each click. We can adjust that by clicking plus or minus on the number pad. You see the rotation step at the top is being changed. The higher the number, the more it's going to rotate in a single click. So I'm going to keep the rotation step at 45 and now I'm going to hit comma. You see it moves a lot further now. And if I highlight it again and hit period, it's going to rotate it back the other direction. This alone allows you to get really precise with how much you're rotating things. And you know, while we're talking about the number pad, you can actually move the wall around without having to select it. It's similar to rotating, just highlight it, then on the number pad hit 8 to move it up, 2 to move it down, 4 to go to the left, 6 to go to the right, 7 to bring it towards you, and 9 to move it away from you. And just like with the rotation step, you can change the movement step by pressing the slash and the asterisk keys on the number pad. You can see the movement step at the top, and when the number is really low, you can get very precise. I brought the movement step all the way down, and look how little it's moving, just inching across, which might seem unnecessary, but it really comes in handy if you're a psychopath like me and you want to get everything just right. Alright, so if you're still with me, let's go back to putting in the wall in the bedroom using these techniques that I just went over. Okay, Jesus, this bed has got to go. I keep bumping into it. Well, actually, while we're here, here's another thing we can go over. So I need to move this bed out of the way for a minute, but I don't want to have to line it back up, right? So if I highlight it and press the equal key, it stores the object's parameters, or its exact position. Now I can move it out of the way, and when I'm ready to put it back, I can highlight it again and press the 0 key, which pastes the parameters and moves it right back to where it was. So it's like a copy and paste of the position, which can save you a lot of hassle if you spent time inching things around getting them just right and you have to move them temporarily. Okay, so time to put in this damn wall. So I don't want to snap in. I'm going to hit F1 to turn that off. And now I'm just going to line it up with the frame and use the floor here to make sure that I'm pretty much straight. So that's not too bad. And now I don't want to accidentally move something, so I'm going to hit F7 to lock the object. Yeah, this mod just keeps on giving. I can lock the focus on one object to where I can't highlight anything else and accidentally move it. So any button I press on the keyboard or whatever is going to affect just this window wall that I locked. Okay, moving the wall. I'm going to hit comma twice, so 1, 2, and that moved it a good bit actually. So I'm going to switch over to the y-axis and hit comma again, 1, 2. And see, it's not lined up with the top frame, and it's actually moving too much. So I bumped the rotation step down, I'm back on the x-axis, and then I hit comma, and that should be, yeah, that's not too bad. I can work with this. Okay, I'm gonna pick it up and try to get it right where I want it to be. I think it's rotated just, it's good enough, but we'll find out. So place that in there, about like that. And it's actually rotated a little further than I would have liked, but for this demonstration, it's not bad. It gets the job done. Now it's not exactly in line where I want it, so I'm going to use the number pad to inch it over a little bit. I'm change the movement speed to where I'm not moving it too much, because when you pick it up, it pops down like this and you have to realign it all over again. So that's why I like using the number pad to make those small adjustments, so that way you don't have to keep redoing everything. I don't even know if you guys can see what I'm doing because I'm just barely inching it around, but I think that looks pretty good. You guys get the idea of what I was going for. So now I want to put this bed back into place. So I'm going to hit 0, and there we go. Back to normal. By the way, I noticed this earlier, and I want to point it out now. So I have these little things sticking through the wall, which I didn't mean to. I think that's coming from the memory bank. So I'm going to use these techniques that I showed you to fix this. So I'm going to lock this object by hitting F7. And now I'm going to go on the other side, and yeah, you can see this is sticking through. So I'm going to change my movement speed down to a pretty low number. That way it doesn't move too much. And I'm going to hit 9 on the number pad to push it away from me, and see, now it's not clipping through the wall. Okay, now I promise this is the last thing that I want to show you guys. I promise, last thing. So you can rescale objects in here too. So I made this airplane a little bit bigger and this helipad a little bit smaller. So if you hit 1 on the number pad, it will scale it down. You see it now is at 80%. And if you can keep scaling it down all the way down to 10%. Okay, I think I just lost it. Whoops. Oh, there it is. Okay, so if I hit 3, it's going to scale it back up. So 1 scales it down, 3 scales it up, and this comes in handy in so many different things. I use this to fill up shelves, to maybe squeeze in a jukebox that might be too big, or whatever. You can do so much with this stuff. Alright, I know this was a lot to digest, especially if you've never seen this stuff before. I'll be honest, it took me some time to get used to it, and there are still some things that I didn't cover. But everything you've seen in this video is what I use all the time. But thank you so much for watching. I really hope this was beneficial. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.